Of all the godforsaken corners in Pecos County, Texas, this one, a dusty stop and fill just off Route 57, had the kind of stillness that made folks keep their engines running, even while pumping gas. It was the kind of place where even the moon looked tired. A black freightliner Cascadia rolled in just after sundown, its engine humming low, not loud, not frantic, just steady, like a warning whispered through desert wind. The truck hissed to a stop under a flickering sodium light. The driver stepped out, tall, broad, black, wearing a weathered brown utility jacket and a pair of scuffed work boots that had seen miles most folks couldn't pronounce. He moved slow, not like someone trying to hide, like someone used to watching everything. His name? Jericho Banks. But names weren't important. Not out here. Not yet. He swiped his fuel card at pump 7, eyes scanning the lot. Calm, unreadable. Nothing about him screamed danger. And that, unfortunately, was exactly why Deputy Troy Cutler, parked in a dusty sheriff cruiser across the lot, perked up. Cutler, thick-necked with a sunburned face, leaned forward and squinted. Another out-of-state rig. He nudged his partner. "You see that, Eli? That boy's hauling East Coast plates? Think he's moving smokes or something hotter?" Deputy Eli Rowe didn't answer. He sipped lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup, eyes half on the truck, half on his partner. Cutler grinned like a man who liked his work a little too much. "Ain't no one comes through Pecos without us knowing why." He tossed his cup, slapped the door, and stepped out. Rowe followed, slower, quieter. They crossed the lot, boots crunching gravel, steam curling from their coffee lids. Jericho didn't flinch, didn't move, just watched. "Evenin', officers," he said evenly, voice deep and cool. "Everything all right?" Cutler stopped a hair too close, one hand on his belt, the other brushing the edge of his holster. "You tell me, driver, got a reason for sitting here taking in diesel this late?" Jericho blinked once. "Yeah," he said, "because that's what trucks do. They stop for fuel." Rowe's eyes narrowed. He caught the calm, the kind of calm that didn't shake when cornered. "What's in the trailer?" Cutler pressed. "You got paperwork?" Jericho didn't move. "I do. But I wasn't pulled over, was I?" The space between them grew quiet. Just the buzz of a half-dead light overhead and the distant rattle of wind against an empty soda can. Cutler's jaw clenched. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by a man who didn't look rattled. "Mind popping that trailer for us?" Jericho raised an eyebrow. "You got a warrant?" Cutler didn't answer right away. Rowe shifted on his feet. Jericho tilted his head, voice low. "You sure you want to do this? Right here?" Cutler chuckled. "That a threat?" "No," Jericho replied. "That's a suggestion. Might want to check your mirrors before you grab that latch." Cutler paused. Rowe turned, uneasy. Jericho motioned subtly toward the cab. 3 tiny red lights blinked from the chrome. One in the bumper, one above the mirror, one by the plate. Cameras, wide angle, night vision, recording. And just behind the rear windshield, almost invisible, a small silver government asset tag, glinting under the station light. Cutler's smug expression faltered, just a flicker. Jericho didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "Who the hell are you?" Cutler asked, now quieter. Jericho's voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone sent here, for people just like you." And right then, without sirens, without any rush, a blacked-out SUV rolled up behind the rig. No headlights, no plates, just presence. Cutler's hand twitched toward his holster. "Rowe?" He grabbed his partner's wrist. "Don't. Not here. Not tonight." Because what they'd walked into wasn't just a truck stop. It was a trap. And the man they thought was a suspect? He was bait. Jericho Banks didn't shift, didn't blink. He stood grounded, one hand resting just beside his belt. Not near a weapon, not defensive, just balanced. Like he'd done this before. Deputy Troy Cutler took a half step back, flicking his eyes toward the SUV now idling behind the freightliner. No lights, no sound, just 2 silhouettes inside, unmoving. Rowe kept his hand off his radio, but his fingers brushed the mic near his collar. Jericho's calm was starting to work on both of them, just not in the way they expected. "We can get a warrant," Cutler muttered. Jericho tilted his head. "You could, but you won't. Not tonight, not out here, because you already made the stop, and now you're hoping I'll give you something to hang it on." Rowe's jaw tightened. He glanced at Cutler. "Troy, maybe we oughta." "Nah," Cutler snapped. "He's bluffing. You think some out-of-state driver's gonna roll through with Fed stickers and backup just happen to be waiting in the wings?" He stepped around the side of the trailer, muttering, half to himself, half to the wind. Jericho didn't move. Rowe stayed where he was, watching the SUV. His gut was chewing itself up now. "You got a supervisor we can speak to?" he asked, voice tight. Jericho's reply came like a door being locked behind them. "Not one you can reach on that little shoulder mic." Rowe swallowed. Cutler reached the back of the trailer, hand brushing the latch. Then he stopped, because just above the metal seam, faint laser-etched, was a code. One Rowe recognized. Federal Transport ID, internal clearance. Cutler didn't see it. He gripped the latch. Rowe called out, "Troy, wait, too late." From the SUV, the passenger side door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dark suit, mirrored glasses, hands folded in front like a pastor before a funeral. He said nothing, just stood there. Another figure remained inside, still, phone to ear, watching. Cutler froze mid-move. His posture shifted. Less swagger, more stall. Jericho finally moved. One step forward. "Let me make it real simple for you," he said. "This truck, this stop, this station, it's been tagged, flagged, and recorded by federal authorization. You didn't just interrupt a fuel run." He nodded at the SUV. "You walked into a recorded site, eyes on you since the second you turned that wheel." Cutler stared. "You FBI?" Jericho didn't answer. Didn't need to. Behind them, the desert wind picked up, brushing sand across the empty lot. The air felt thicker now, not loud, just heavy, like something old had just woken up. Rowe's voice came quiet, unsure. This ain't what it looks like, right?" Jericho met his eyes. "No, Deputy. It's exactly what it looks like." Deputy Troy Cutler stood still, his hand resting on the trailer's latch, but no longer holding purpose. He looked over his shoulder at the suited man standing near the SUV, motionless, unrateable. Jericho Banks didn't press forward. He didn't smirk or gloat. He simply waited, like a man accustomed to silence being the loudest thing in the room. Cutler's voice cracked under the weight of confusion. "This ain't protocol. This is entrapment or something." Jericho raised an eyebrow. "Is it? Because I didn't approach you. I didn't call you over. I didn't even speak until you got in my face. All I did was fuel up. You turned this into a stop." Rowe stepped forward slowly, hands slightly raised, not in surrender, but like he was trying to balance on ice. "You recording this?" he asked. Jericho looked up at the chrome blinkers. 3 lenses, one in the cab, one above the trailer hitch, one in the side mirror, all rolling, all streaming off sight. Cutler cursed under his breath, stepped back from the latch like it burned. The suited man by the SUV still hadn't moved, still hadn't spoken. Rowe finally said what they were both thinking. "You baited us." Jericho's eyes flicked to him, calm, even. "No, you volunteered. I just made sure somebody was watching when you did." Cutler's hands curled into fists. "You think you can just roll into our town and start poking holes in our department? Who the hell even sent you?" Jericho didn't blink. Let's just say, someone got tired of hearing the same names come up in complaints. Someone noticed the pattern. Rowe looked at him. "What pattern?" Jericho stepped once more toward the center of the lot. His voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it dropped like an anchor. Too many traffic stops that went undocumented. Too many dash cams malfunctioned. Too many people left scared, shaken, silenced. All out here where nobody was supposed to be looking. He paused. Let it sink in. But someone was. Cutler looked to his cruiser like it might save him. Rowe just looked at the ground. From the SUV, the second door finally opened. A woman stepped out, long dark coat, clipboard in hand, no smile, no introduction. She walked toward the cruiser and placed an envelope on the hood, thick, sealed, marked with a federal crest. Jericho turned back toward his rig, his footsteps echoing in the flat Texas night. "You'll want to read that before morning," he said over his shoulder. "It's not a warning, it's a record." Cutler stood paralyzed, eyes locked on the envelope. Rowe watched Jericho climb back into the cab like a man clocking out after a long shift. The freightliner came to life, low and smooth, no lights, no sirens, just the slow, deliberate exit of a man who didn't come to make arrests. He came to expose what everyone else pretended not to see. The black freightliner rolled forward slowly, tires crunching over gravel, its red taillights blinking like a warning that hadn't been fully heard. Cutler didn't speak. Rowe didn't move. They both just stood there, staring at the envelope glowing white under the station lights like it was radioactive. The woman who placed it had already returned to the SUV. The suited man remained outside, his mirrored glasses reflecting the cruiser like a one-way window into judgment. Inside the trailer, Jericho was pulling. There weren't any drugs, no weapons, no illegal cargo. Just neatly packed pallets of bottled water, medical-grade cleaning wipes, canned goods, and woven between those, a network of fiber-optic cables, motion-detecting transmitters, thermal sensors, and military-grade audio recorders wired into every panel, every footstep, every word. Jericho wasn't moving freight, he was hauling proof. 10 minutes earlier, back in the cruiser, Cutler had been bragging, loud, smug, and unfiltered. Most them long-haul boys'll throw you 100 just to skip the hassle, especially the ones with out-of-state plates. We don't even gotta push hard. Hell, sometimes I don't even call it in. Rowe had half listened. That was his thing, half listening, half caring. But now, the consequences were rolling in. Full speed. Rowe stepped away from the cruiser, eyes flicking back and forth like he'd just woken up from a nap and realized the house was on fire. You think this is about us? Jericho's voice came through his open window, calm as ever, fading with distance. It's not personal, but it's also not random. Then he was gone, a shadow swallowed by the Texas highway. The SUV followed, silent, its black tires spinning without screech or roar. Cutler was breathing harder now. He finally stepped toward the cruiser and ripped open the envelope like it had insulted him. Rowe didn't ask to see the papers. He already knew. Inside was a single typed page on clean federal letterhead. No fluff, no doubt. Notice of active federal observation District 42, Pecos County Sheriff's Department. It listed dates, complaint numbers, incident timestamps. At the bottom, a single name. Senior Field Investigator, U.S. Civil Rights Division. Cutler's mouth went dry. Rowe finally spoke, quieter than he'd ever sounded. We weren't even supposed to be on shift tonight. Cutler looked up. You think he's coming back? Rowe didn't answer right away. Then, I don't think he ever left. The next morning, the precinct felt colder. Not physically, but in that way a room gets when laughter's been replaced by suspicion. Deputies Troy Cutler and Eli Rowe were called in early. No coffee, no briefing, just a terse note on the whiteboard. Report to Conference Room A, 0700. No delays. They walked in together, boots thudding against tile that suddenly seemed louder than usual. The room was already set. A long table, no donuts, no jokes, just silence. And two men in pressed suits. Neither wore a badge, but both carried themselves like they owned the floor. One was tall, clean-cut, no nonsense. The other shorter, glasses, flipping through a folder like it held the Bible and a loaded weapon at the same time. On the far side of the room, mounted on a tripod, a camera blinked red. Recording. Live. Time-stamped. Cutler's throat clicked. Rowe didn't speak. The tall agent looked up, voice neutral. Officers Cutler and Rowe, have a seat. They did. No introductions, no pleasantries. The shorter agent opened his folder and began sliding photos across the table. Still frames, Cutler's hand on the trailer latch. His mouth caught mid-sentence. My, caught in a lie he never expected would echo beyond a gravel parking lot. Rowe, in the background, watching, silent. The room held its breath. Then the agent's voice again. Calm, not aggressive. The kind that didn't need to raise volume to carry threat. This is not a trial. This is a preliminary review. What happens next depends on how honest you're willing to be, starting now. Cutler opened his mouth, but Rowe raised a hand. Let me speak first. Cutler flinched. Rowe didn't. We didn't know who he was. But that's not an excuse. We knew better. We just didn't think anyone was watching. The agents said nothing. They didn't have to. Because Rowe was right. Someone had been watching. And now, they were answering for what they thought could stay off the record. For years, Cutler had relied on silence. On the fear in the eyes of drivers too tired to file a complaint. On the idea that people didn't remember badge numbers in the dark. But the cameras had remembered. The microphones had remembered. And now, so would the state. The folder was closed. The agents stood. The meeting was over, and nothing, not the uniforms, not the small-town swagger, not the years of standard procedure, could stop what had already been set in motion, because someone had flipped the lights on. And now, there was nowhere left to hide.